Welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we strive and explore ways to achieve those two goals. And we invite people on to help us who are just absolute superstars in one of those areas. So today I'm excited to introduce you to Amanda Sharratt. She started as a financial coach, then she became a financial advisor, and now she is the chief operating officer at Whitaker Myers Wealth Managers. And when you look at her, if you're watching the video, she looks like she's about, what did you say, 18 years old?
Well,
I
thank
hope you
you.
take that as a compliment, Amanda, because you look extremely young. And that's, that used to be the case with me. And people said, oh, you'll be so glad when you're 60. And now I am 60. And I guess I'm glad I don't, I'm glad I looked young when I was 16, I guess. I don't know.
Yes,
Welcome
absolutely.
to the
Because same
show.
thing. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the compliment. Because yes, I used to be offended by that, but I have learned to just say, "Yep, thank you." I'm 35 now, so I'm not 18, but thank you.
Still, 35 is very young to have accomplished all of that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
What, as an older person now, I wish I would have been more interested and excited and involved in finance when I was younger. But it seems like a fantastic advantage, but not necessarily a field that young people are like drawn and excited to. So how were you first exposed to this field, and what got you excited about it? What got you interested?
Yeah, I actually got interested in this field through a personal experience. So my husband and I started out probably like most people. We got married, we had student loan debt, we were not afraid of debt. So we had debt on pretty much everything, I think. And um, when my mother-in-law had taken a class at church and she knew how much student loan debt my husband had, and so she said, I would be happy to pay for you guys to go through this course. And we did not want to because we thought we were doing fine. We were young and we thought we knew it all. But we did it because mom really wanted us to. So we took the course and it ended up changing our lives personally in that we paid off our debt and it made a huge impact on our lives. And then also professionally, because I started having this desire to help other people to do the same thing. So I started off just by leading those classes at our church. And then I became a financial coach and had my own business doing that. And then a natural progression was to become a financial advisor as well. So really just started from a passion that I had that I said, I never knew about this and it changed my life. I want everyone else to know about this as well.
And that's a fantastic way. I mean, if you're already doing your passion, which a lot of people don't even figure out until they're old. So that's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. My mom always jokes that every time I talk about money, she's like, you just light up. I don't know what's happening, but you just light up when you're talking about this stuff because I do love it.
Hey, what's not to love about money? I mean, come on.
That's right. That's right.
It's a great tool. So speaking of that, this is the time of year when a lot of people are either evaluating their goals for money or setting new goals for 2024 for their money. What kind of advice can you give us poor saps who are not as educated as you are about what to do with our money and how to deal with all this mess?
Yeah. Well, my simple answer would be we really follow Dave Ramsey's principles and his baby steps. So he has a really clear defined plan. And so he calls it the baby steps and we really help people walk through that. So we have a team of financial advisors that they help people, we say, late in the later baby steps of helping them invest and save for retirement and plan for the long term. And then we also have a financial coach who she helps getting people ready to get to that point where they're ready for a financial advisor. So, meaning, how do you build a savings? How do you pay off that debt? How do you plan for the expenses that you want to save up for? All of those lifestyle, day to day type of money things is what she helps with. So, we really can help people, I would kind of say, in any area of their finances. And really, to answer your question of where do you start, is just really looking at your picture, which sounds so simple, but so many times we just get overwhelmed with it and we just don't even want to look at where we're at. So if you have debt, maybe you don't truly know how much debt you have. If you are overspending, maybe you don't even know how much you're bringing in every month versus how much you're spending. So really just starting to take a step back and look at your overall financial picture And maybe it's not as bad as you think it is, or maybe it is, but there is a plan and a way to move forward from there.
Well, and that's, you bring up an excellent point, Amanda, because I mean, I know people, and I can even think of times in my own life when I've been just in complete denial about debt because I knew it wasn't good. I knew I couldn't pay it off, and I just like wanted to give up on it. Oh, actually, I'm going to hold on for 1 second. I'm going to pause this because there's somebody at my door. Hold on a second. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Okay.
Okay. Never mind. Well, because the fire department's
Okay.
coming, or the Massey fire's coming. So just, anyway, sorry.
Okay.
We'll
No
leave that
problem.
to the editor. Sorry. Sorry, Savannah. Anyway, yes. So I'm going to start that over again. So you bring up
Okay.
an excellent point, Amanda, because I know people, and I was a people like this, who have like debt and it's piling up and you don't know what to do about it. And you're using credit cards to pay the credit card bills. And you just it's hopeless. So why don't I just go ahead and, buy this other thing, because it doesn't matter. I'm not going to be able to pay it off. Right. You get into that circle where you're like, hey, what difference is one new Coke going to make? How, I'm already up to my eyeballs. Why don't I just buy this other thing? And it can become a really depressing spiral. So is there hope? And, I'll also say that even though that person might be willing to buy that new thing, they might feel like I can't afford to pay somebody to help me with my finances, right? So what would you say to that person?
Yeah, a couple things I would say is I think you're exactly right. I relate finances to health and fitness all the time. And so your example, it makes me think of when you are on a diet and then you break it, but to have a donut and then you just wreck the rest of the day, right? And we know we shouldn't do that. But so same thing, we do it in all areas of our life. But what I would say is there is hope. And even if you can't afford to pay for somebody to help you and sit down with you personally, that's okay. There are tons of free resources. So I mentioned Dave Ramsey. They have, podcasts, YouTube channels, all of that. And then we here at Whitaker Myers produce videos and articles every week. And I do a question of the week video where I just answer a question that we are hearing from our clients, and they write in to us and ask us, and I answer it there so everybody can see it. And it's a lot of times about day-to-day financial topics. So I would say plug into those free resources. And then going back to the health analogy and fitness analogy, I always tell people, you start lifting weights, you don't lift the heaviest weights. You lift a little until you can lift a lot, right? And I relate that to finances and saying you need to save a little until you can save a lot. So you just really start with, even if it's $1 or $5 that you can squeeze out of your budget and put towards a savings account or towards paying that debt, it feels like you're not making progress, but you're building that habit of saving and building that muscle, and so it will become more of a habit in the long run. So I would just say don't overlook starting small.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are the advantages once a person feels like they can spend a little bit of money to help themselves get more financially fit? What are some of the advantages of working with a person sort of one-on-one?
Yeah, I think it's because working with someone one on one can give you the personalized advice. So, going back to my story, what prompted me to become a financial coach myself was in teaching these classes, people would ask me specifics about their situation. Like, okay, we just talked about this, but how does that apply to my life in this situation? And I was not qualified. But financial coaches and financial advisors are qualified to say, okay, let's run out the scenarios of how this applies to your life and your specifics and how it will impact your retirement plan and all of those things, and give you more individualized advice. Versus when we produce content or Ramsey Solutions or anybody and it's for the masses, it has to be very general. So I would
Yeah.
say that's the biggest benefit of working with someone
Yeah.
individually.
And is there what could somebody expect for a timeline? Like, does this is this a 10-year thing we're talking about? Like, you would take you 10 years to get out of debt? Or is it more like I mean, I know it's very individual, but what do you see with your clients?
Yeah, we see like 1 to 2 years. Obviously, that's an average, and it just depends on how much debt they have and how much their income is. And so, really can vary, but it really doesn't take a long time. Now, you might say, 1 to 2 years is a long time, but we know how fast time goes. And so it really isn't to sacrifice for a short amount of time to then know that you have the peace and freedom to do all of the other things. Because one of the mistakes I made in the early days was when I started helping people, we were towards the end of paying off our debt. So we had $141,000 of debt and we paid it off in 3.5 years. And so we got really intense and intentional with it. And so we cut our budget down really low in a lot of areas. And the mistake I made when I was helping people was I did that for them. I was like, you should not spend this, you should not spend this. And
Yeah.
what I learned was you can't do that. They have to want to do that for themselves
Right.
because and it comes over time. You make small sacrifices and you see that it's paying off, and then you're willing to sacrifice a little bit more to get that to the debt to be paid off sooner. And so when you start seeing that you can really take this effort and make an impact for your future and what that can mean to your life, it it's totally worth it. Because the reason why anybody should make sure they have a savings account or pay off their debt is because it creates a lot of peace of mind for you. I mean, if an emergency happens and you have an emergency fund, now you only have to focus on that emergency. You don't also have to focus on the money problem that it created, right? I use the
Yeah.
example of I hear a lot of times people are so stressed when their kids have to go to the hospital because their kids in the hospital, but in the back of their mind, they're also worried about money. What if you didn't have to have that focus and you can be fully present in what's happening? And that is really why I'm so driven to help people, because it creates a great peace of mind.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. Um, yeah. So as sometimes happens, I thought of a question while you're talking and now I forgot what it was. So, oh, yes, I remember now.
Okay.
Oh, good. Hopefully won't make it too hard for Savannah by cutting out all kinds of stuff. Um, so Dave Ramsey talks about paying off the little stuff first, right? And I have a question about that. So let's say that I have because when I attack my own personal debt, I always do it by interest rate. Like whatever has the
Okay.
highest interest rate is what I'm going to pay off first, feeling like I'm getting more gain that way versus if I have you know, something like, for example, right now I bought a, a couch and I have a 0% thing from the furniture place, but I
Yeah.
have no intention of paying it off early because it's 0%, you know what I mean? But it's a very small amount. So in theory, right, you would say, okay, you pay this off and then you go up to your next highest one and then your next, right? Am I correct about that's the way Dave Ramsey
Yes.
talks or
Yes. Correct.
suggests? So explain to me why that's better than doing highest interest rate first.
Yeah. That's a very good question and a very common question. So if Dave will say this himself, mathematically speaking, paying off the highest interest rate first is the best idea. But money is so much more about math. It's so much more about your personal feelings around your money and your behaviors. And so it's really getting those small wins that help you. So you pay off the smallest debt and you feel like you've accomplished something. And then you have more money. That they call that the debt snowball, because then now you have the money that you paid on that debt to put on the next one. And then you just keep rolling that snowball over and it gets bigger, and you could pay off those larger debts a lot faster. And so it's really just about those quick wins and making sure that you see you're making traction in your goal.
Yeah.
Our largest debt was over $100,000. And so, we had 141. If we would have started, and that was also the highest interest rate. If we would have started there though, I would have felt like we were never going to pay off debt. We
Yeah.
started with the couple $100 on the credit card and it was like, wow, we can do this. And then we paid off our cars in like 6 months a piece. And we were like, we really can do this. So we
Mhm.
just kept going and we saw it working in our personal life. And then we see it with clients all the time, because it really is about making sure that you're seeing it work and making that progress. That's what keeps you going.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I wonder, mathematically, because now you are willing to you are able to put more cash, more money into the larger debt if it doesn't sort of even out eventually, sort of mathematically.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Because then by the time you get to that largest debt, you not only have all the minimum payments and extra money you've been paying all along the way to throw at it, but again, you're continuing to find extra things, you're selling stuff. And so, you're really like, what we tell clients is, we know that this doesn't make sense to you mathematically and we can't prove it, but here's your debt snowball, but you're going to pay it off sooner than this. And they're always like, what? And it's like, yes, because if you get motivated, we can't even put that on a spreadsheet, because you're just going to find money everywhere. We see it all the time. Clients that said they would never sell the truck, or they would never sell their prized possession, or they would never get a side hustle, and then they do it. Maybe a couple months into the program, because they're like, okay, I really want to make more progress.
Yeah. Yeah. And they get excited about it and motivated and stuff. Awesome.
Exactly.
So back to like we're going all over the place as usual here. So back to the idea of setting goals for like the coming year. What's a good way to sort of go about that? If you're like, okay, I want to make sure that XYZ happens or whatever, like if you want to try to do that on your own. And I mean, a lot of the reason that we don't achieve our goals, right, is because we just sort of, we're not really, I don't know, maybe it'll be magic. Maybe it'll just automatically, if I just say like, right, you write a check to yourself, to the law of abundance, and you put it under your pillow, and then magically you just end up with an extra $10,000 or something, right? That's the way we'd like it to happen. But what kinds of things do goals that actually happen kind of have in common for financial goals
Yeah,
that
I
you,
think
in your experience?
I would say a couple of things. The number one thing I would say is to focus on one thing at a time. So we all want a bunch of different things to happen in our life. That is common and that is normal. But if you focus on one thing with intensity, you are more likely to get it done. Like I am so guilty of multitasking, but if I focus on one thing, I am so much better at it and I get it done faster. And that's true with your goals and your money goals. So, that's why we say make sure you have a starter emergency fund first. Get that out of the way. It's a little bit of a cushion between you and life if you're not going to use your credit cards anymore. Then work on paying off debt. And so you just do one thing at a time to make sure that you're going to accomplish it. And then I read a book recently called All It Takes Is a Goal, and he talks about easy goals and breaking them down into really bite-sized pieces so that it's like almost if it was a goal that you told somebody, they would make fun of you. So going back to my example of saving a little, like, maybe your goal, if you don't have any savings at all, maybe your goal is to save $5. Or your goal is to not go out to eat one night, or, it's so little that you almost are embarrassed to say it. But again, if you just can accomplish that, then you can build on that. So those are the two things I would say to start with.
Yeah, I mean that's how people say, how do you build self-confidence? It's like you make a goal and you achieve it. You make a goal and you achieve it. And the more you do that, the more you feel like you can do things and you feel more self-confident, and right. And then all of a sudden your goals can get bigger, and then they're still going to happen. And right. Yeah.
Yes,
Excellent.
exactly.
So what does your life look like today?
My life, financially or professionally or personally or all of it.
Yeah, how about all of it? Let's just throw it out there. Anything you want to talk about.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, I am professionally, we are very busy. We are, blessed to be growing quickly and helping a lot of clients. And so, my role is to really support the business and support the team members and train them. And so I love that because I love, financial coaching. I love the financial advising side. And now I get to help others to be able to have those skills as well. So that is my life professionally. And then personally, I'm married and I have a daughter. And so we are currently training my daughter is going to be 8 next week. And we are currently training to hike a 14er in Colorado next summer. And so we are really excited about that, a little nervous about that. But that is something that's big in our life right now.
Well, and that's fantastic because you can see like you're teaching your daughter how to make goals and what you have to do to accomplish them, right?
Yes, exactly. We do a goal board every January. And we started when she was like 2 or 3, just with stickers and stuff. And now since then she's added other goals and we check in on it. And we also talk about like, you know, we don't always accomplish them, or throughout the year then maybe the goals change. And so, talking about that also. And then one thing that she's been learning about at school and we've been reiterating here is stamina. So that is, that's applicable here about our conversation, is having stamina to keep pushing through even when you don't want to, keep doing the things even when you don't want to. And nobody's perfect at it, but just remembering it. And that's why I think the goal board is nice for me, because I have it right when I walk into my bedroom. So I have to remember those goals that I said I was going to try and accomplish for the year.
Excellent. So I'm glad you brought up your daughter, because now I'm going to ask you about kids and finance. Like, how do you help your
Okay.
children to understand money and to not get into the situation where they have $141,000 of debt that they're trying to pay off?
Yeah. Um, Great question. I am very passionate about talking to children about money, and I think it's age appropriate, right? So, if you have, I always tell clients, if you have young kids, you're not going to tell them like, mommy and daddy can't pay the bills and we're afraid the lights are going to be shut off. You wouldn't say that, but you would just start talking about like, no, we can't do that because it's not in the budget, right? You just start saying little things and hearing them catch on to it. But if you're starting young, then really just starting really simply. So we have started with her. She does chores, and we give her money for her chores. So that's teaching her that she gets money from work. And then with that money, we have 3 jars that she puts it into. So a give jar, a save jar, and a spend jar. And that's really building a budget for her. It's very simple. She's going to be 8. She doesn't need a budget on a spreadsheet. Um, but she can she can use that to know that that's the money in that jar to go ahead and go to the store and spend money on, or she can give to a cause that she wants to give to, and she feels good about it. And then also, again, I really think that building that entrepreneur mindset is good, because finding a way to make extra money, or pivot from a job if you need to, is a really good skill that in working with clients and even in my personal life, I've noticed that it is not everyone has that mindset. But if you have that mindset of saying, this is the way that we did it, but we don't want to stay there, we want to change, or we want to get money from another source, or that sort of thing. So we've really tried to get her involved in again, age appropriately, starting little side hustles. So her and I make jewelry together and we sell it. She has a lemonade stand in the summer, and then her and my husband have a firewood business where they split the firewood and they put it out the road to sell it. So um, some people think it's a little silly, but she loves it, and it's starting to teach her the entrepreneur life, the mindset, and also how to handle money.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's just fantastic. And then I like the jars because it's very visual, right? It's not like, oh, it's in the bank account, right? It's right here, and here is what you're allowed to spend, which I think most kids, they're either going to be savers or they're going to be spenders. But what you're teaching is that it's okay to do both. And I love that you're incorporating charitable giving, because that's huge, right? And that's a wonderful thing to learn at a young age.
Yes, thank you. That is, I mean, I have a big passion about giving too, because that was another thing. We really didn't, we were not generous. I mean, we would just give when maybe prompted at the store or something, but we felt like we didn't have money to give.
Exactly.
And we started really putting that into our budget while we were paying off debt. And we were able to add that in and still pay off debt. And it's become really important to us. And so trying to also instill that in her. And I found that a lot of people, are curious about giving. Clients are like, how should I give? Why should I give? How much? And
Yeah.
so it's a fun topic to start talking about.
Yeah. And it's it's amazing because, like what you just said, we didn't feel like we could afford to give. And as soon as you start to put that into your lifestyle, you do feel more abundant, right? And mindset, as you said before, is such an important part of this. So you start thinking like, yes, I'm giving to these people, I'm helping people. You start to feel warm and fuzzy, and right. I mean,
Yes.
it's fantastic. It's an important aspect. But since you brought it up, what are some guidelines for like what's a good amount to give, especially when you're also
Yeah.
paying off debt?
Yeah, that is a very good question. I I'm a Christian, and so I believe giving 10% is the right amount that's the baseline. Like we should give 10%. I understand that not everyone comes from that mentality, but that is what I believe, and that is what we started doing even while we were paying off debt. And so that is what we do, 10% to our local church, and that's 10% of your income. And people might say, whoa, that is a lot of money. And it is. But if you can't do that, again, start small. And so if you just are giving a few dollars to a cause that you care about, I think that is really, it's more about the mentality and what it does to your heart than the actual amount. It's,
Yeah.
sure everybody has heard about living with an open hand. Because when you live with an open hand, not only are you letting money go out, but you're allowing money to come in instead of living with a clenched fist because no
Yeah.
money can come out or go in.
Yeah.
And so it's really about the mentality, what it does to your heart, I think, more than the actual dollar amount. And so, if you don't go to church, then it's just another charity that you believe in. And I think being intentional with it is really important. So a lot of times at the store, when they ask, do you want to give money to this? I say no. And I think people probably think I'm rude, but we have been intentional with what we want to give money to. And
Right.
so then, because I think it's also important to know how they're handling the money when you give it to them, because
Yeah.
you're in charge to manage this money. And so if you're passing it on to somebody, hopefully they're using it for the causes that you believe in. Um, so that's the guidelines I would give around giving.
Yeah. No, it's excellent advice. And you're right. Like just dropping a dollar into a bucket or handing it to somebody on the street or whatever, people who accost you at the red light, I mean, I don't feel bad about not giving those people money because I don't want to pay somebody to do that. Right. I mean, like to me, that's about like rewarding the behavior that you want to see. Like, I don't want to pay you to stand out here in the freezing cold and rain to collect money. I would like this to not work at all so that you'd have to do something else that's, better serves you and uses your skill set more. And whatever. I just think, is this something I want to pay somebody to do? No, it's not. So,
Yeah.
but if you,
Yeah, instead, can you give to the food pantry maybe that they
right.
could go to, or the homeless shelter or something? Can you give to those causes that are there to help those people? That's I'm similar to that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Cause like, you're right. I mean, how is this company, how much the money I'm giving you is turning into administrative expenses or how much right? I mean, some of these places I got a call the other day, do you want to give it to the policeman's thing? And I'm like, who are you? Does this really even go to the police? Why do they need my money? I'm pretty sure I'm paying a lot of taxes. I'm like, what's this all about? And you just can't even get into it with them. But I don't even know if they give the money to the police. I don't even know who they are, so I just,
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. You want to make sure that it's going to the right place. And yeah, so you take your time, you look online, and to your point, like that makes me think of scams are so viral right now. They're everywhere. And so, yeah, just don't feel bad saying no. And maybe you will end up giving to that organization, but do your research and then circle back to it. So I agree.
yeah. Well, and I think that's what they're preying on, right? Is this guilt? You feel guilty because you have more than I do, so you got to give me some money. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, we shouldn't make decisions out of fear or guilt, right? You want to make sure that you're not making decisions in that way. I would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens once people start to get that little nest egg? They've got a little bit of money that they're thinking, okay, maybe I could put this money to work. Maybe I could send it off to work. What kind of things do people do to start off when they're just starting to save? What do you
Yeah, so when
suggest?
you're just starting to save, we say just keep it really simple and boring and just have a savings account because it's almost like insurance, right? You don't like paying for your insurance, but you do it because you need it. You might need it someday. And so think of your emergency fund like that. So when it's your emergency fund, and we say 3 to 6 months of your expenses is a fully funded emergency fund. And so once you're to that point, so you would have your debt paid off and you had to have your emergency fund funded, we say, okay, just keep that in your savings account And then from there, you're ready to start saving for retirement. And we recommend 15% as a baseline. Now, that can vary depending on how old you are, how much you have saved, when you want to retire, all of those things. So it can, we like to give individualized advice there. But generally, we say that that's a good starting point. Again, we say don't let that scare you off. If you feel like that's too much, just start saving what you can. I've certainly seen people start contributing to their Roth IRA with $25 a month because that's where they're at right now. But and a common question is, it always surprises me at this point now, I've heard it a lot, is if I could only save $25, is it even worth it? And my answer is always yes, yes, because you are at least putting $25 in there, and that's going to add up throughout the year and throughout the years that you have until retirement. And the reality is, you're going to hopefully increase that more and more every year. So that's what we would say is really start planning for your retirement. And that's where our financial advisors do a lot of financial plans, because we say a financial plan is the answer to, am I going to be okay in retirement? And I think at the end of the day, that's kind of all what we're asking, what we're wondering in the back of our mind is like, retirement is coming someday. Am I on track? I hope so. Will I be ready? And so the answer to that is to do a financial plan, because it really looks at how much you have saved, how much you are saving, when you want to retire, and all areas of your estate planning, your insurance, all of those areas, and make sure that you are okay financially and ready to retire when you want to. And if you're not, then what tweaks can you make in order to be able to accomplish that goal, or at least get close to accomplishing that goal?
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So, Amanda, our time is flying by today, but I want to ask you, what is it that you wish I would have asked you? What is it that you really want to make sure people know that we haven't touched on yet?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think we've covered so much of it. We've covered like almost all areas. I guess one of the things that I would say I touched on just a little bit there is estate planning. So many people do not have a will or a trust. And I don't know if it's because they just feel like if they do that, they're going to die, but that's not true, right? That's not true. We know that. And so my husband, when we did our trust, he had to kind of joke his way through it, like, okay, if this means that if you die in a fiery car crash, or if I die, or and kind of like make light of it, because that was his way of coping with talking through those situations. But the reality is, you want to make those decisions while you are alive, especially if you have kids. You don't want the state to decide where your kids would go, god forbid something happened to you. So that's something that I really like to stress a lot. And then what goes along with that is life insurance. So many people don't have life insurance, and so making sure you have life insurance, so that your loved ones are not grieving and trying to figure out how to change their lifestyle at the same time. So
Right.
those are, I don't mean to bring the conversation down, but those are two things that I think are so important.
No, I mean, that's, and of course, a lot of these things, the sooner you start, right? When's the time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. But the second best time to plant a tree is right now. And that's what,
That's right.
with your savings, right? Even if it's $1, if it's $10, $25, and your life insurance, the younger you are when you start, right? The lower the premium. So just do that. Put your mind at ease, one less thing to worry about. And you don't even realize how much these things are kind of, working on you in the background. So
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I always tell people there's certain things, like when you check them off of your list, you relax in a place you didn't even know you were stressed. And so
yeah.
I think you're right with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Amanda, how can people reach you if they want to, if they're ready to like become intentional about their finances?
Yeah, the best way would be our website. So that is whitakerwealth.com. And again, we have videos on there. Our chief investment officer does a weekly what we learned in the markets. So just kind of a recap of what to know about the markets. And I do a question of the week. And then we have 2 articles written by our advisor every week. So we are busy creating content. And so there's a lot of free stuff there. And then, of course, we'd be happy to meet with you as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us, Amanda. I really appreciated talking to you. You're super. I love your attitude.
Well, thank you so much. That's very kind. And it's been a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, listener, for listening. If you are ready to start 2024 off with at least working in the direction of having a clean slate, at least working in the direction of getting rid of that debt that's been weighing you down, aging you prematurely. Or if you know somebody who is in that situation, just forward this episode to them, because they will thank you. They will definitely thank you. And maybe, who knows, maybe they'll be like Amanda and they'll grow up and become financial planners themselves or COOs. And have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next week.